Hi, everyone. This is Tracy from the Fairborn branch of the Greene County Public Library. I'm here today to talk to you about marriage records and all the different types that are available. And let's go ahead and get started. We'll go ahead and share my screen with you. Sorry about that. So there are different types of marriage records, and at different points in history, they looked different as well. So some of the different types of marriage records for genealogy you can find are applications, licenses, certificates, intentions to marry, bans, marriage registers, bonds, affidavits. All of these are records of a marriage either being planning to happen or has happened. And we'll get into all the different types and how they were used. So there's some things to keep in mind. A couple could change their mind at any time prior to doing the official certificate and not actually get married. This means that you might find an application, a license, bans, notices, and all that, but not an actual certificate because they may have changed their mind at the very end. Another thing it can do is if you cannot find a certificate, but you know they were married, it could give you an approximate time for the marriage within a few months or so, because usually applications and licenses and stuff for marriage were only good for a certain amount of time before you actually had to go through with the marriage and get your official certificate. And depending on the time and location, you could find information about the parents of the bride or groom as well as the bride and groom. This is especially true if either the bride or the groom were minors. And you should also pay attention to all the people mentioned in these documents, witnesses, parents, siblings, etc., because they can provide you information to help further your research in other areas or just kind of get an idea of who was around to further your research. So the first time we're going to talk about are marriage bans. These were public announcements of a marriage that was going to be coming. The point of this was to let people object. So if somebody had moved from one area to another and the current wife found out, she could object to the new marriage. Many times these were done within churches. Sometimes they were posted in papers, but most of the time they were done in churches. And if you can see here, it says they were going to announce it 3 times to see if anybody had any objections to the marriage of these two people. Next up is an intention to marry. This is very similar to a ban. It was a public announcement of their intention to marry. Some places required these as part of like your marriage, getting ready to get married packet. Again, as times changed, they were used differently. So I believe the bans were used first, and then it transitioned into the intention to marry. Then came the actual application. This was used by the local authorities, and they said, yes, they're allowed to get married. Today, it's the form we use today when you get married. It usually has information about the bride and the groom, date of birth, occupation, where they are living. Sometimes they have their parents' names if they've been married prior to. And that's all good information to help you build a picture or find other spouses or possibly other children. Down here, if they had been divorced, there's a listing of when it happened, who they were married to, if there were children. Again, all good information. And then as you read further down, you can see when they entered it in and when it was actually approved and the certificate was issued. We'll get into the certificate here in a minute. But on more modern, say from the 50s on, this is kind of more what the marriage application, abstract, submission to the court, and then the final certificate are kind of all on one page. Next up is a marriage license. This is one of the steps after you get your marriage application. So you would fill out that previous page, the top part of it, then you would get a marriage license. This is what you would take to the officiant who is doing the ceremony. And then they would sign it and then resubmit it, and you get your license and you get your certificate. Older ones were very ornate, very, very beautiful. Some of them pictures and artwork. Oh, they're gorgeous. This just says that it's a marriage license. They're decorative. but they're not an actual um, official state issued, state recognized form. Maybe for some older marriages, this would work to prove marriage and stuff like this. But this is not an actual marriage certificate saying they were legally married. They were in the process of getting married. um, Next up is the marriage certificate. This is after you get your marriage license. You've done the ceremony, the person officiant has signed off on it, and then they turn it back in. Now you are officially married once they have their registration of it. There'll either be a certificate like this. Like I said, this is 1939, where it has like the bride, the groom, the officiant, when it was actually done. And here is the application, the abstract, and down here is the actual certificate of when the service and ceremony was performed and when it was actually verified by the courts. Some people with genealogy do count any of these, especially older ones when they're having trouble finding records. It's up to you what you do. I just wanted to present you with the different types you could find so you would understand what you are looking at. Next up were marriage affidavits. These were sworn statements that might be required. Um, these were often done when somebody was underage getting married. It was just basically saying, this is who it is. I am the parent. I am agreeing for my daughter to marry this man and giving approval of that. Marriage bonds. Again, these are an older form. This one's from the 1800s. These were mostly done in older southern states and mid-Atlantic states. To ensure that the marriage wasn't going to come by and say, oh, this is an illegitimate marriage. You couldn't have been married to this person. It's basically saying, this is who it says these people are who they say they are. And we agree that they're going to get married and have no reason why they cannot be married. Sometimes there was money involved saying, I will give you $500 if this doesn't go through. If we find out for some reason you can't get married, we're saying everything is true. Sometimes they look like this, very formal. Sometimes they're just a handwritten note from the father of the bride to the groom or the family of the groom. Sometimes, and in some places, everything was done in one document. So you literally carried the paper around with you. You would have your intention, you would have your bond, you would have your registration to marry, your application, and then you would have your record of the certification and the certificate all in one form. So everything was all together. Another good place to look for information is in the newspaper. You can find announcements about engagements and weddings. Sometimes they'll actually have, it's really pretty, they'll have detailed descriptions of the wedding down to like what the bride wore, what the flowers look like, the food at the reception. So you can get a really good idea and picture of what the weddings look like and know for sure if the wedding actually happened. And those are the main ways you can document a wedding or marriage. Again, if you have any questions, you can feel free to contact the Fairborn Library, contact me, or contact your local librarian so you can learn more about this. You guys have a great day.